Hello dear students, welcome to the biology online class. So in the previous classes we have studied about the structure of the male and the female reproductive organs of the flower, and under that we have completed the topics structure of microsporangium, pollen grain, and the structure of megasporangium and the development of 7-celled 8-nucleate embryo sac. Clear? So let us move on to the next topic, that is pollination. So what do you mean by pollination? So pollination means it is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a pistil. So once again I will repeat the definition. It is the process of transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a pistil. Clear? So in a flower, it consists of the male and female reproductive organs. The male reproductive organ is called as the stamen, and the female reproductive organ is called as the pistil. So now this is the stamen and this is the female reproductive organ, which is called as pistil. Okay. Now in the stamen, it consists of three parts: anthers, connective, and the filament. And this anther, it is the tip part of the stamen which produces the pollen grains. Am I clear? So in the flower, the anther produces the pollen grains, and this pollen grain carries the male gametes. Am I clear? Now coming to the structure of a pistil. So as I said before, this pistil, it is a female reproductive organ, and this female reproductive organ, it mainly consists of three parts: stigma, style, and the ovary. And this tip part is called as the stigma, which receives the pollen grains. And in the ovary, it contains the ovule where the female gamete is located. Is that clear? So in this way, after the formation of the male and the female gametes, the process pollination takes place, which means the transfer of pollen grains which are formed within the anther to the stigma of the pistil. Am I clear? Okay, now coming to the types of pollination. It includes three types. They are autogamy, geitonogamy, and xenogamy. So what is the meaning of autogamy? So autogamy means it is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of the same flower. So once again I will repeat the definition. It is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of the same flower. So now in this flower, so this is the stamen portion which contains the tip part anther. Okay, and now from this anther the pollen grains are produced. So these are the pollen grains. Okay, now if the pollen grains are transferred from the anther to the stigma of the same flower. Okay, if the pollen grains are transferred from the anther to the stigma of the same flower, then this type of pollination is called as autogamy, or it is also called as self-pollination. Okay, and this type of pollination, it is found in two types of flowers. They are chasmogamous flowers and cleistogamous flowers. So chasmogamous flowers means these are the normal flowers, the flowers with the exposed anthers and stigma. Okay, so chasmogamous flowers are nothing but the flowers with exposed anthers and stigma, and they are also called as normal flowers. Okay, whereas The cleistogamous flowers means these flowers do not open at all, and when anther dehisces in the flower buds, the pollen grains come in contact with the stigma to affect the pollination. And some plants such as viola, oxalis and commelina produce both these two types of flowers. So chasmogamous flowers are nothing but these are the normal flowers, whereas cleistogamous flowers are nothing but these are the flowers which do not open at all. So that here self pollination is possible. Okay, and so this is the image of a commelina plant which produces both type of flowers, both chasmogamous as well as cleistogamous flowers. And these chasmogamous flowers, which are also called as the normal flowers, they are present above the ground level. That means they are normal flowers. Okay, whereas cleistogamous flowers, these flowers are produced below the soil. So these are the cleistogamous flowers which are produced below the soil level. Understood? And these flowers do not open at all. And so in chasmogamous flower, either self or cross pollination can take place, but in cleistogamous flower only self pollination is taking place. Understood? So that is about the first type of pollination, that is autogamy. Coming to the second type, which is called as geitonogamy, which means the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of another flower of the same plant. So once again I'll repeat the definition. If the pollen grains are transferred from one flower to another flower of the same plant. So this type of pollination includes two different flowers belonging to the same plant. So if the pollination takes place between two flowers of the same plant, then that type of pollination is called as geitonogamy. Understood? And the third type is xenogamy, which means transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a different plant. So in geitonogamy, what happens? Here the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of another flower of the same plant. So in geitonogamy, it involves two different flowers, but these flowers are produced on the same plant. Okay, but in xenogamy, the pollination process takes place between two different flowers of different plants. Understood? So now coming to the next topic, agents of pollination. So the agents which bring about pollination process are called as pollinators. Once again I'll repeat, the agents which bring about pollination process are referred as pollinators. So in pollinators there are two types of agents. They are abiotic agents and biotic agent. Now the abiotic agent, it involves two types, two agents, wind and water, whereas the biotic pollination includes the animals. Okay. So coming to the first type of pollination, that is abiotic pollination. As I said before, it involves two agents, wind and water. So the pollen grains coming in contact with the stigma is a chance factor in both wind and water pollination. To compensate for these uncertainties and associated loss of pollen grains, the flowers produce enormous amount of pollen when compared to the number of ovules available for pollination. And only a small proportion of the plants use abiotic agents for the pollination process. Am I clear? Now coming to the first type of agent under abiotic, that is wind. And if the pollination takes place with the help of wind, then it is called as anemophily. So anemophily means if the pollination process takes place with the help of wind. Okay, and the plants which exhibit anemophily type of pollination are called as anemophilous plants. Okay, now this is the more common type again amongst the abiotic pollination. And coming to the characters of wind pollinated plants are, the pollen grains are here lighter in weight and non-sticky, so that they can be transported in wind currents. And the second character is, they often possess well exposed stamens, so that the pollens are easily dispersed into the wind currents. So these are the characters of wind pollinated plants. So the first character is, here the pollen grains are lighter in weight and they are non-sticky, so that they can be transported in wind currents. And the second character is, these plants possess well exposed stamens, so that the pollens are easily dispersed into the air current. Next character is, they possess often large feathery stigma to easily trap the airborne pollen grains. Okay, so this is the third point, presence of large feathery stigma to easily trap the airborne pollen grains. The next character is, flowers often have a single ovule in each ovary. That means wind pollinated flowers possess single ovule in each ovary. Why it is so? Because due to variation in wind speed, the pollen losses are high. So the chances of multiple pollen grains dispersed in stigma are very less. Thus, wind pollinated flowers have single ovule in each ovary. So, why these wind pollinated flowers have a single ovule in each ovary? Because due to the variation in the wind speed, the pollen losses are high. So, the chances of multiple pollen grains dispersed in stigma are very less. So, thus the wind pollinated flowers have single ovule. Is that clear? And coming to the next character, numerous flowers are packed into an inflorescence. So here many flowers are clustered together to form the inflorescence. They are grouped together to form the inflorescence. And the last character, flowers are not very colorful and do not produce any nectar. So these are the characters of wind pollinated flower or wind pollinated plants. Once again, I'll repeat the points. So here the pollen grains are lighter in weight and they are non-sticky. The plant possesses well exposed stamens, so that the pollens are easily carried by the winds. And the plant possesses large feathery stigma to easily trap the pollen grains. And the flowers often possess a single ovule in each ovary, and numerous flowers are packed into an inflorescence, and flowers are not very colorful and do not produce any nectar. And examples for this wind pollinated plants are corn cob, which is nothing but maize, and grasses. So these are the examples, common examples of wind pollinated plants. So in wind pollinated flowers, the flowers are different in structure because they do not have to attract the insects to them, but do need to be exposed to the wind. So here the pollen grains are very small and they are lighter in weight. So these are the adaptations, or these are the important characters which are found in the wind pollinated plants. So the pollen grains are very small and they are lighter in weight, and they occur in larger quantity or in larger numbers. And here the petals are small and green, as there is no need to attract the insects, because here the main pollinating agent is wind. And the next point is anthers are here exposed to the wind so that the pollen can easily be blown away, and the stigma are here feathery to catch the pollen carried on the wind. And the last character is no scent or nectar. They do not possess any fragrance or any nectar. Am I clear? So these are about the wind pollination. We'll move on to the next topic, that is water pollination. So if the pollination process takes place with the help of water, then the process is called as hydrophily. Once again I'll repeat. If the pollination process takes place with the help of water, then it is called as hydrophily. And the plants which exhibit an hydrophily type of pollination are called as hydrophilous plants. Okay. So it is quite rare in this type of, this water pollination. It is quite rare in flowering plants and is limited to about 30 genera, mostly monocotyledons, that means monocots. And here water is a regular mode of transport for the male gametes among the lower plant groups such as algae, bryophytes and pteridophytes. And some examples of water pollinated plants are Vallisneria and Hydrilla, which grow in the fresh water, as well as several marine sea grasses such as Zoostera. So not all aquatic plants use water for pollination. In water hyacinth, that means in Eichhornia, and water lily means Pistia, the flowers emerge above the level of water and are pollinated by the insects or wind, as in most of the plants. Okay. So now coming to the characters of water pollinated plants. Here the pollen grains are protected from wetting by a mucilaginous covering. So this is the important characteristic feature of water pollinated flower. So here the pollen grains are protected from wetting by the presence of mucilaginous covering. And like wind pollination, here also the flowers are not very colorful and do not produce any nectar. Okay, so the flowers are not very colorful and they do not produce any nectar. Coming to the examples, as I said before, Vallisneria, Hydrilla, which are found in freshwater habitats, and Zoostera, which is also called as a seagrass, which is found in marine environment. Is that clear? So in Vallisneria, what happens is the female flower reaches the surface of water by the long stalk, and the male flowers or the pollen grains are released onto the surface of water. So what happens here? The female flower, which has long stalk and it is coiled. Okay. So during the time of pollination, what happens? The female flower reaches the surface of the water by the long stalk. Okay. And the male flowers or the pollen grains are released onto the surface of water, and they are carried by the water currents, and some of them eventually reach the female flower and the stigma. Thus the pollination process takes place. Okay. So these are the pictures of Vallisneria, water pollination in Vallisneria. And this Vallisneria, it is a dioecious plant, means here the sex organs, the male and the female sex organs are produced in a produced in two different plants, so that it consists of male plant and the female plant. So this is the female plant. This is the female plant which consists of female flower. So here is the female flower, and this female flower, it contains long stalk. So this is the stalk, okay. And this is about the male flower, male plant, which contains male flowers, and here the flowers are arranged in the inflorescence. So during the time of pollination, what happens? The female flower, it reaches the surface of water by the long stalk, and the male flowers or the pollen grains are released onto the surface of water. So in this way, the pollination process takes place. Understood? But in seagrass, that means in Zostera, the female flower remains submerged in water, and the pollen grains are released inside the water. Whereas in Vallisneria, the female flower reaches the surface of the water, and the male flowers or the pollen grains are released onto the surface of water. Whereas in sea grasses, that means in Zostera, the female flower remains submerged in the water, and the pollen grains are released inside the water itself. And the pollen grains in many such species are long. So here the pollen grains are long and they are ribbon-like, and they are carried inside the water, and some of them reach the stigma, and this achieve pollination. So in this way, pollination takes place in Zostera. So these are about the water pollination. Now coming to the second pollinating agent, that is biotic agent. So this biotic agent, it mainly includes animals, and majority of the plants use biotic agents for pollination. For example, bees, butterflies, beetles, wasps, ants, moths, birds, bats, etc. These are the common pollinating agents. And among the animals, insects, particularly bees, are the dominant biotic pollinating agents. Even larger animals such as some primates, arboreal rodents, means tree dwelling animals, and or even reptiles have also been reported as pollinators in some species. Okay, and often flowers of animal pollinated plants are specifically adapted for a particular species of animal. Okay, so if the pollination process takes place with the help of animals, then it is called as zoophily. Once again, I'll repeat. If the pollination process takes place with the help of animals, then such kind of pollination is called as zoophily. And under zoophily, it has several types. Okay. For example, if the pollination process takes place with the help of insects, then such kind of pollination is called as entomophily. So entomophily is nothing but pollination by insects. So coming to the adaptations of plants, or coming to the characteristic features of the plants, insect pollinated plants. So here flowers are large, colorful, fragrant, and rich in nectar. And when the flowers are small, a number of flowers are clustered into an inflorescence to make them visible. And animals are attracted to the flowers by color or fragrance. And the flowers pollinated by the flies and beetles secrete fall odors to attract these animals. So these are the characters of insect pollinated plants. Once again, I'll repeat. Here the flowers are large, they are brightly colored, and they possess fragrance, and they produce large number of nectar, large quantity of nectar. So when the flowers are small, they are grouped together to form the inflorescence. And animals are attracted, or insects are attracted to the flowers by its color or its fragrance. And particularly the flowers which are pollinated by the which are pollinated by the flies and the beetles secrete foul odors to attract these animals. Understood? And to sustain animal visits, the flowers have to provide rewards to the animals. Okay, to sustain animals visit, or to encourage the animal visits, the flowers have to provide certain rewards to the animals. And the rewards may be in the form of nectar and pollen grains and safe places to lay the eggs. So these are the rewards which are provided by the flowers to the animals. So the nectars and the pollen grains, the animal visitor comes in contact with the anthers and the stigma, right? And the body of the animal gets coating of pollen grains, which are generally sticky in animal pollinated flowers. So when the animal carrying pollen on its body comes in contact with the stigma, it brings about pollination. And the second reward is safe places to lay eggs. For example, Amorphophallus, the flower itself is about 6 feet in height. So this is a flower, this plant possesses a flower, and here the flower itself is about 6 feet in height. And they provide safe place to lay the eggs of insects. And a species of moth and yucca plant. So both the species here, moth and the yucca plant, they cannot complete their life cycles without each other. The moth deposits its eggs in the locule of the ovary, and the flower in turn gets pollinated by the moth. The larvae of the moth come out of the eggs and seeds start developing. Okay, so these are about the entomophily type of pollination. So this is the picture of Amorphophallus flower. The flower is about 6 feet in height, and this is the relationship between the moth and the yucca plant, where the moth lay or deposits its egg in the locule of the ovary, and the flower in turn gets pollinated by the moth. So this is the yucca plant. Okay, so many insects consume pollen or nectar without bringing about pollination, and they are called as pollen robbers or nectar robbers. So what do you mean by pollen robbers? So these are the animals, or these are the insects which consume pollen or nectar without bringing about pollination. So they are referred as pollen robbers. Okay, so these are about today's topic. Thank you.